Hello everybody, my name is Goblin, and welcome to another build video that I am doing. This one is going to be a Nightblade for the Markarth PTS, and I am a Nightblade main, so this was a really fun build for me to put together, and this is not this is not an off-meta build. The reason I put this build together is because I found that a lot of the Nightblade rotations out there are pulling crazy numbers right now, but they are extremely difficult to perform, especially in an actual trial. Um, they have a lot of variables, a lot of moving components, and really, you can have a perfectly easy static rotation that is easy to keep up in an actual raid environment without dropping too much damage. Uh, you're looking at like a 2 to 3k difference, and by no means am I nearly as talented as some of the top players out there, so I was finding those rotations a little bit difficult, and so I wanted to put this together. So I'm going to look at the stats here buffed up, and we're going to hit this to get our critical to the proper rating. Okay, so with that, we are looking at 81% crit, just under 4k weapon damage, and that'll go up when we start adding in our back bar dots. And 34k max stamina, that's going to give us a lot to work with, as well as we have a lot of stamina recovery. I'm using the Lava Foot Soup and Sultress. When you're actually doing content, I would recommend the Dubious Camo and Throne, because that's going to put your max health up to about 15k. But for the purposes of parsing, we're using the Lava Foot Soup and Sultress right there. But Dubious Camo and Throne, if we do this and drink a potion again, 10 stacks. You're going to be looking at about 15k health. When you get a Warden buff, that'll go over 15 and you'll be perfectly fine. Alright, so let me get into the skills that we are using. So I'm going to talk about the actives first. From the Assassination skill line, we have Incapacitated Strike on both of our bars. On the back bar, we won't be casting it at all off the back bar. It's just there for one of the passives, which we will talk about later. And on the front bar, we're going to be using it. And the biggest thing about this is the 20% increased damage for 6 seconds. So we're going to be activating that and then getting in our spammable phase, and it's going to do a ton of damage. As well as this ultimate is very cheap. You can actually cast it roughly about every 20 seconds. So throughout the parts, you're getting a lot of incap off. Alright, and then we also have Killer's Blade. This is our execute spammable. This spammable does a ton of damage during execute, and during that part of the rotation, we're basically going to drop everything but this. And also, a benefit is that we get increased critical from one of our passives by just having this on our bar throughout the fight. So it actually is doing work for us even when we're not in execute phase. And Grim Focus, or Relentless Focus, I should say, is the stamina morph of Grim Focus. This is a massively important skill. It increases our critical chance, and every 5 light attacks we get a bow proc, which is a high damage attack that will also heal us. So even in trash pulls, we're going to have this on, and we're going to let it stack up, and then if we get into trouble, we're going to use it as a burst heal. Alright, and then in the shadow line, our main spammable is going to be surprise attack. You can also use rapid strikes from the dual wield tree in place of surprise attack, but I like surprise attack in less optimized groups. It gives you a little bit of penetration for your group, as well as setting the enemies off balance, you know, helping your group maintain maximum off balance uptime. I think it's worth having, unless your group is absolutely perfect. And I don't like rapid strikes as much because you can't swap off of the bar instantly. You will actually interrupt the rapid strikes if you try to swap off the bar, so you can lose damage there. And we also have Dark Shade. Dark Shade is going to be a dot for us. We're casting it off the back bar, And the biggest thing is that it is a 20-second dot, so it's very easy to maintain. Costs magicka. It's our only magicka skill that we have. And, you know, a little bit of minor maim never hurt anybody. Definitely going to help out keep that up throughout the fight with your group. But we do drop this during execute. It doesn't do as much damage as our other dots. We don't have any skills in the siphoning tree. You can use siphoning strikes if you are having sustained issues. You would morph that into the stamina morph as leeching strikes, and this will return stamina as you hit. But I have personally, this patch, I'm having no issues with stamina sustain in any fights at all, and we can pull way higher damage if we just don't use this. So you aren't going to need anything from siphoning. I'll talk about the passives later, but the only one you're going to need is Catalyst. We don't have any dual wield skills. Like I said, you can use rapid strikes. For this build, it works just as well. You might even actually get slightly higher damage, but I will show you, as you'll know, the damage that we pulled was massive anyways. However, we are going to need all those, so we're going to talk about those later. For bow, on the back bar, we have Arrow Barrage. This is going to proc our back bar weapon enchantment, which is why we are going to need to keep this up throughout the fight. And I used Arrow Barrage. You can use Endless Hail if you like, but with this particular rotation, Arrow Barrage is going to do a lot more damage because our uptime is still extremely good. It's going down for at most 1 second if we have any little glitches with our rotation, but it's not going to drop our enchant at all, so we're losing maybe 1 or 2 ticks of damage if that does happen. Poison Injection. This is a very important skill. We are using a Master's Bow, so that is going to increase our weapon damage as well as it is an execute ability. So this is going to do a ton of damage throughout the fight, and it is very important to keep it up. And last, we have the Fighter's Guild skill line. So we have Ring of Preservation on our back bar. This is going to be our emergency heal, as well as it's there for a passive. On both bars, you'll see I have Camouflaged Hunter. This is really important. Not necessarily for the Major Savagery, because our potion doubles up on that, so that won't go down for us. But the Minor Berserk for 5 seconds when you deal critical damage from the enemy's flank is going to be huge for us. That's basically giving us Minor Berserk at all times because we are actually able to fit this onto both bars, as well as this buffs our damage by just being there through our passives as well. And lastly, we have Barbed Trap on the front bar. This is going to be giving us Minor Force, increasing our critical damage by 10%. If you're using one of the alternate sets that I'll talk about, you can drop this for something else. But for the sets that I'm using right now, this is going to be really important, and we keep this up throughout the entire fight as well. Alright, for the passive skills, the most important ones are going to be your assassination tree. Master Assassin has been changed recently, so this now gives physical penetration when you're flanking an enemy, and for most boss fights that is going to be the case. So for certain trials, you're not going to get much use out of this, but obviously you still need the points in the passive, because in other trials, or particularly vet dungeons, it's very easy to flank the boss while you're hitting it, and 3000 penetration is nothing to scoff at, and it allows us to allocate our CP a little bit differently to maximize our damage. Executioner, this is good for trash pulls. You don't necessarily need this, but you should have it. Pressure points, must have. We have multiple assassination abilities on both of our bars. So we have at least 1 on both of our bars, and we have 3 on the front bar. So this is going to be a huge amount of critical chance for us. Hemorrhage, extremely important. This is going to give your group Minor Savagery. It's one of the only sources of that in the game, if not the only one, and increases your crit damage by 10%. That's going to be going on top of us using the Shadow Mundus to gain bonus critical damage. So that is a huge part of our damage. For the Shadow line, Refreshing Shadows is very good, going to give us recovery. Shadow Barrier is not necessarily 100% needed. If you are lacking points, you don't necessarily need to have this one, but we are going to be casting shadow abilities, so we will get some uptime on this buff. This is good. 3% max health is nothing bad, and having a little bit more health as a DPS is really important. You don't want to be one shot as easily or dying to ticks, if you make a mistake. Dark Veil you don't need. Oh, sorry, we do need this because it takes our Dark Shade from 18 seconds to 20 seconds, so it helps with uptime. My bad. Siphoning, you do not need anything but Catalyst. We have no siphoning skills in the build. The only thing you need is drinking a potion gives you 20 ultimate. For weapon, we're going to need everything in the Dual Wield and the Bow. The most important ones, though, being Twin Blade and Blunt. This makes it so that we get better critical chance by using a Dagger and the bleed from the axe. Ruffian is okay, pretty good. Controlled Fury, you don't need because we are not using any dual wield skills right now. Dual Wield Expert is important. That's just going to increase our damage a little bit, and you don't actually need Slaughter because, again, we are not using any dual wield abilities. However, for trash setups, I do use Whirlwind. I do use Whirling Blades for trash pulls, so it is important to have these if you are changing your setup for trash pulls. Bow. Long shots can be good. If you ever have to space off the boss, this will give you a little more. This is good. We need the critical rating. Reduces the stamina cost of bow abilities is going to be important because we're casting 2 of those on our back bar every time. We don't want to run out of stam. Now this is really important because when we're on our back bar, the light attack weaving is going to give us a little bit more damage out of those first few ticks of Endless Hail and Poison Injection while we are on the back bar. Hasty, you don't necessarily need it. I like to have it because if you have to roll dodge out of the way, you run a little bit faster. Okay, let's have a look at our Fighter's Guild passives. These are all going to be really important, but the most important one is Slayer. That is giving us additional damage for every Fighter's Guild skill we have. We have 2 on both of our bars, so 6% damage all the time. Banish the Wicked is going to give us ultimate. This is really important if you're doing anything. I always have this, especially if you're doing particular content like, I don't know, let's just say Banish Cells. Pretty much every single enemy in that dungeon is Daedra or an undead. So you're going to get a lot of ultimate out of that. Intimidating Presence, we are casting Barbed Trap, and this is pretty expensive if we do need to cast our heal. So it's nice to have that cost reduction, though not strictly necessary. Skilled Tracker, if you're fighting a Daedra or an undead or werewolf, your Barbed Trap will do 20% more. It matters a little bit, not as much, and you don't need Bounty Hunter. Other than that, Undaunted, we do only wear one type of armor, but this still gives us a little bit of max stats, so we do want to have it. And then for racial, we are a Dark Elf for this build, and the reason we are a Dark Elf is because of the increased weapon damage, and these other 2 are good to have, particularly for some content where you're taking a lot of fire damage. It's going to really help. And yeah, that's about it for the important passives. Let's get into the gear right away here. So I'm wearing 2 Selenes, both Divines. That's going to give us a proc chance. I'm wearing 5 Perfected Relequens. That is going to give us the Harmful Winds, which is going to do a ton of damage, and we get 5% damage bonus against Trials, Dungeon, and Arena monsters. On the front bar, we are wearing the Berserking Warrior set. This comes from Hellraw Citadel, and this is going to effectively give us over 4,000 critical rating, which means it's giving us over 10% crit chance just from this one set, and we are using that on the front bar, and then on the back bar we have a Master's Perfected Bow. The reason for this is that it increases the damage against enemies affected by our poison injection, as well as we have a infused weapon damage enchant on the back bar. So this is actually increasing our weapon damage by over 600 alone by casting those two abilities. And this, we're using poison, double dot poison, that's going to give us the most damage. Alright, and it's divines on all of the armored pieces. And we have bloodthirsty with weapon damage enchants on all of our jewelry. Again, just pushing up that weapon damage. Okay, skills and passives, sets, traits, enchants, food, pots, and poisons. I went over the poisons. I've talked about food already. The pot that we are using is a stamina recovery, major brutality, major savagery pot. This is just going to increase our weapon damage and our critical rating. Gold Coast Warrior Elixir does it. You can buy Alliance Battle Drought from the Cyrodiil vendor, or you can make it, and it's called Essence of Weapon Power. Alright, let's get into the rotation really quickly. Actually, I'm going to talk about CP just a little bit quickly. The most important CP we have is our blue CP. Now, I've got 16 into piercing. We actually meet penetration cap on the dummy. This is very important. On the dummy with 16 in piercing and a sharpened offhand weapon. I should touch on that really quickly. I might have missed it, just in case I didn't say. Sharpened on the offhand, Nirnhoned on the main hand. This is going to give us the most. We get penetration from this, which allows us to allocate this CP into other things, which is great. And this just gives us the highest weapon damage possible, which we have a lot of crit. We already have a lot of pen. We don't need anything for like that. So Nirnhoned is going to give us the best. And infused on the back bar. Alright, so back to CP. We have 16 in piercing, that's all we need. We've got 56 precise, 56 Thaumaturge. That's going to increase our dot and our critical damage modifier. And then we've got 67 into mighty. That's physical, poison, and disease damage. All of our damage fits into those three categories. So this is basically just a 13% damage increase. Flat. We've got 75 Master at Arms. That's going to increase our direct damage attacks. That's good because our Spammable, the Bow proc, and our Execute are all direct damage, as well as that gives us the Butcher passive in the CP line, which gives us a little bit of Execute on our light and heavy attacks, which is always good. We don't have any points in the Apprentice tree. For the green tree, the only thing that's really important is 100 Mooncalf, maximum stamina recovery, and then 20 into tenacity. I never do heavy attacks, but you will do them at some point, especially if you run out. You want to get a lot of regain or recovery from that, and that gives us the windrunning passive, which is nice to have. And other than that, it's just based on what you need. If you find you're roll dodging a lot, you can put a lot into there. If you find you're blocking sometimes, you can put into there. And Warlord is great for break free. Certain scenarios you're going to be breaking free pretty much on cooldown. You might need that. Sprinter is always good to have. For red CP, I do highly recommend that you check out ESO University and cater your red CP to the content that you're doing. They have charts where it shows exactly what CP you should have for exactly which trials to minimize the amount of damage that you take. I've just thrown this in. None of this is going to be important for parsing, so you don't necessarily need this. But I do recommend you have at least 10 in the Lord for the Field Physician. Taking less damage while you're resurrecting is always nice. And try to spread out these three evenly if you don't know what content you're going to be doing, just to minimize everything. And then I've just slammed 100 into Ironclad because I had it there. Okay, let's talk about the rotation. So, the Grim Focus, fire this off. So as you see, I have an add-on that helps me with this. As I do light attacks, it stacks up And at 5, I get to shoot the bow. Now, once I shoot the bow, while this buff is still active, it still gives me the crit chance. So you don't drop the crit chance. How it used to work was it would give you mitigation, and when you fired it, the mitigation would go away, and it would do the damage and give you the burst heal. Now, the crit chance stays. As long as we don't let it go down, that crit chance doesn't go away. And in fact, even if it falls off, if you had the 5 stacks, it still stays. So once we stop casting this in execute phase, it is still giving us the benefit of the crit chance. You don't need to recast it. So our whole rotation is built around having exactly the right number of strikes in between bow procs. So what we do, I pop my potion, I do the Grim Focus. Light attack, put down the Beast Trap, and swap. Okay, that's going to start giving us minor force. Then we're going to go Endless Hail, Poison Injection, Shade, swap, bow proc. You notice that exactly going from 1, 2, 3, 4, I do a light attack and I can shoot the bow right away as soon as I swap to that front bar. Then I do 1 with a surprise attack. We do that 4 times, and then another bow proc. And then we start over, but we have a slight variation every other time, which I will show you. So, then we go Beast Trap down again, Endless Hail, Poison Injection. We swap bars there. I'm just going to renew this, but you wouldn't normally cast that. Then we cast our ultimate, and then we have a bow proc ready again. And then again we do 4 spammables and a bow proc. So every time you go to your front bar, you should be starting with a bow proc and ending with a bow proc. So, how this is going to look when you do it a little bit quicker is you go bow proc, or sorry, turn on the Grim Focus, Beast Trap, you swap, hit the bow, 1, 2, 3, 4, hit the bow again, Beast Trap, and as you see, we're recasting our dots right as they are coming up, and then we get the bow proc. So this is timed out perfectly so that you are casting your volley and all of your other dots exactly on time. And it's very smooth. And you'll notice that the ultimate comes up just about perfectly in time for the recast. So the only thing that you got to keep track of is that every other rotation, so the first rotation you're going volley, injection, shade, and then the next time you're on the back bar you're going volley, injection, swap, incap, bow. And that's all it is. You do that over and over until you get to execute, and then when you get to execute, you simply drop the shade and the bow proc from the rotation. So let's say execute, by the way, starts at 25%. Killer's Blade begins to do 300% bonus damage at 25% health. So as soon as 25% health goes, you're dropping the surprise attack and you're swapping in this, and your rotation is simply trap, volley, injection, do this until the barrage comes back up. You see I have a little countdown on the right hand side there for my ground effects, and as soon as I see that hit about 2 seconds, I'm going Beast Trap and I'm dropping it again. Then if my incap is up, I hit it at that point and then I keep going. And as you see, the Relentless Focus crit chance doesn't go away during that time, even though we're not recasting it. Now, if you need to recast your Relentless Focus during the rotation, you can simply do this. If you need to recast it, you can do it, then do the ult, and then fire the bow and go into your ult phase. Or if you need to recast it during the other part of the rotation, you'd have one more at this point. You're just going to fire the bow, and you can replace any one of your spammables in this chain with the Relentless focus. And that's all there is to it. So I'm going to show you a CMX that I did just a few minutes ago. And what you'll notice is, oops, I saved that. I was able to pull a very high number. I pulled 90,000 DPS. And I've looked at other numbers that are out there. And the highest I've seen is 93. With a much harder dynamic rotation using double dual wield. So there are higher numbers out there, but this is far easier to use. Even the simple rotations that I've seen don't come close to being as easy and as streamlined as this one that I've come up with here. And this is what I use on live. So I have a lot of practice with this, and I can tell you that I have pulled really high DPS, especially for the groups that I've been in. I've done some trials where I ended up pulling 30% of the group's DPS on my Nightblade. Now, obviously, those are not, super organized groups where everyone's really, really good, but this has really carried me through a lot of content. We can look at some of our uptimes here for this parse. I actually had quite low uptime on Major Brutality and Major Savagery for this. I don't think I was quite as on it as I could have been with my potion, but for my out on the debuffs, you can see that Barb Trap has very high uptime. I dropped Poison Injection a little bit near the end during Execute, but overall good uptime on that. We have very high uptime on Surprise Attack up until Execute time, so we are going to be providing that slight penetration bonus to our team. And Incapacitating Strike, 25% uptime, that's very good. We're casting this basically on cooldown as soon as it comes up. Sometimes you are going to have to sit there and hit 2 light attacks in a row and then drop your incap, but that's okay because putting that on cooldown right away gives us much better uptime, much better damage. 5 times Relentless Focus, that's giving us good crit chance. So as you can see for this parse, my crit chance was sitting right around 80 and my crit damage is very high at 123%. So we're doing a ton of critical damage throughout this. And I'll just show you this. Execute is huge for Nightblade. We basically start out around 70k and slowly climb throughout the parse, and then you can see as Execute happens, I was around 83 and it shot all the way up to 90 with close to 200,000 damage over the last 5 seconds. Damage per second over the last 5. So yeah, that's the CMX, and I'm not going to do a full parse on this video because it would take a long time, but I can show you just a couple rotations on the dummy and then what the Execute looks like. So I buff up. I like to start with my ultimate since it's ready. Do the bow proc. Hit 4 of these. Hit the bow proc again. Beast trap down. As you can see, we are overcasting the beast trap, but it simplifies the rotation so much, and it's such an important buff that I really don't mind casting it with 8 seconds left, even if it's not quite optimized. Oh, we're gonna have to just wait for a second for our ult to come up there. That's okay. I missed a light attack there, so on the front bar I'm just gonna renew my focus since I missed one anyways. And now we have our ultimate up ready. Oh, that was bad. Start that over. PTS has been a little bit iffy here this week, but I did manage to get a good parse, so I'm happy about that. it's just this over and over. And every time I swap bars, you can see that it's perfectly in time for my bow to go off. And then when we get to execute, right, we're going to drop the beast trap. We're going to put down this and that for the weapon damage increase, and then we're just basically hitting spammables and just wailing away on the enemy with Killer's Blade to do maximum damage. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this build video. I enjoyed making it, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you again another time. Alright, my name is Goblin. Thanks for watching.